Today, I'm talking with Reggie, who is the founder of CEL HR Consulting and an experienced HR professional. We'll get into what led him to choose a career in HR, the moment he decided to start his own consulting firm, the hardest parts of that transition, and the lessons he's learned along the way. We'll also talk about how he stays sharp and grounded in a fast-changing industry. Thanks so much for being here, Reggie.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm very excited to be here and share some wisdom with your audience.
Sure, no problem at all. So let's just jump right into some of the questions we have here. So, what led you to choose a career in human resources?
It's a great question. I've been in higher education for about 18 years. I did admissions work for a couple of major research institutions, and then I worked at a community college doing admissions, and then I moved into academic advising. It was my dream job at the time because I got a chance to work with about officially since 5,000, it's probably a lot more individuals, just really helping them through their career paths. And along the way, I became a parent. And I don't mind sharing my age. I became an over 40 dad, and still at that time, still trying to figure things out. And I got involved with because I know I wanted to pursue leadership, so I got involved with my union. It was in triple C, which is the faculty staff union at the community college, and I became a campus vice president. And then I was elected twice, and I was the first African American, and I was the first professional staff to lead the fourth largest chapter union at that time. So, I did it for 2 years. We had what we call work the rule because we were in the contract negotiations. I had worked across, as I said, across the aisle with HR and administration. And so after 2 years, I was ready to head back into the ranks, and I had conversations with HR, and they kept saying, "You ever thought about working with us?" I'm like, HR? No, absolutely not. But as time went, I really started to reflect on where I've been the last 18 years and really started looking into it. What really sparked me to think about moving into HR was I'm doing when I was in my second year as a union president. My first year, I was always clashing with the director of HR. We just never saw eye to eye. And over my second year as union president, I read a book, Getting to Yes, and it's the book on art of negotiation. It comes out of the Harvard Law School, and I read that, and then I also took a course called Essentials of HR through my institution. It was just to get a certificate, and it really in that second year, it really gave me a better idea of what because with the Getting to Yes, it's like it's not about people, it's about positions. So being able to understand the person who's sitting across from you, what are some of their challenges and what are some of the opportunities, how you can find common ground. And then also understanding kind of the nuts and bolts of HR. And that really helped me forge a better relationship with it. We did something, yeah, we didn't always agree, but it gave me a better understanding that what they were dealing with. And also it strengthened me in regards to how I could best advocate for my membership. And then when the position came open, I really thought about it, and I decided to, hey, this is a great time to move into the HR space. So I took a position there as assistant director for human resources and affirmative action, and I did that for about 6 years. And went back for me, it's always important for me. I'm an individual. I like to be, I'm a lifelong learner, and I always believe in how to gain knowledge. So during that time, I went back and I got a certificate, not a graduate level, not, it was a non-credit certificate through Coursera out of the University of Minnesota, and it was HR people management. And that really fortified me in regards. And then also through my job, they sent me for federal training around affirmative action, and also did some state training as well in Massachusetts. So that really helped really frame me in regards to human resources. And here I am today.
Nice, that's awesome. I love that you talked about the pivot, the career pivot, where you're working in another field and ended up in HR. And you mentioned that when you heard about HR, when they said, "Hey, come work with us," you're like, "Ugh, I'm not sure." What do you think is that thing that gets people thinking, "Oh, maybe not HR"? What are people getting wrong? And what are they thinking in the back of their minds when they're saying no to HR? But really, there's this wealth behind it. Tell us.
One of the things, and I'm sure you've heard this and your audience has heard this, is just like the saying is HR works for, they don't work for you, they work for the company. There is to protect the company. And I thought that as well. But I did my research. And what I would say about our profession, about the HR profession, is that a true HR professional advocates, a true HR professional stands up for the employees, a true HR professional negotiates some difficult environments, but it's always about integrity, it's always about ethics, and it's always about honesty. And then again, there's some situations as an HR professional, you realize that you've done everything you could. But if you know that you've held people accountable, but you've also worked across the aisle to really build a bridge between employee and management, that is so important. So I think that was one of the things that having a better understanding of the profession, researching and understand that, we're all human, but we do have it is a noble profession. It is not an easy profession because there are times in which you are in environments in which you can do all the right things and it's just not the right environment. And that's why you find HR professionals who would just move on because the bottom line is if we have those of us who are certified or not certified, we have a code of ethics, we have standards. Unfortunately, sometimes you're in the workplace, it's just not the right environment. And you have to make that decision that makes sense for you, makes sense for your life, and you move on. And but I do think there's a lot of times in which HR, particularly I would say, and we may get more into this since the pandemic, everyone really, HR, I think that's where HR really stood up and people really turned to HR. I think also some of the challenges for HR now is that everyone looks for us to do everything. It's trying to really find that balance. But I think really really bringing to educating employees, educating the public about what this HR does, what do we do, and what are we responsible for. And then also sometimes it's also educating your organization as well, because I would say to you, what I found in my experience is there are some individuals within the organization who still think of HR as a personnel department. This process paperwork, this process paperwork, this really where the policy police and that's when they bring us out to enforce. And it's no, that's what this the human resources. We are strategic partners. We really look at from hire to retirement, or if there's layoffs, or if an individual has to be let go. But it's really looking at things strategically. And in this day and age, it is about building community within an organization. And I say community as opposed to family because family it can be loaded depending on a situation. So it's really about building community. So that's where I would say there's been an evolution. But sometimes you do have the challenge of individuals who still think of HR from 50 years ago. It may be some HR departments that are still using file cabinets. I use a few, but a lot of those file cabinets, especially after the pandemic, became electronic file cabinets.
Yeah, I love everything that you've mentioned so far. And you mentioned education as you were going along there, but you also mentioned that when you made the transition into HR, that the company invested in you to teach
Mhm.
you more of the job and more of the HR
Absolutely.
background. And I really like that because I think what holds some people back from taking the next step or transitioning or going to a new role is I don't know how to do the stuff. I don't know the lingo. I don't really understand the field or that content area. And if go ahead, take that step, and then a great company will invest in you and have opportunities for you to grow. A lot of companies have professional development as well that you can take advantage of. For you, taking that step, I'm sure that it must have been challenging. Sometimes people deal with imposter syndrome and things like that. And when
Mhm.
you're going into this new role, when you were making that transition, what were some of the challenges, or even as you made that transition and you got into the role, what were some of the challenges that you faced and how'd you overcome some of those?
Oh, great question. I would everything you said, especially about imposter syndrome, because we as human beings always question, and especially in dealing in a multi-ethnic, multiracial, multi-generational, we look at diversity, sexual orientation, different abilities. All those things factor in, especially when you're going into a culture, you may a culture that you are not you're one of few. You go into a dominant culture, and it can be varied for each individual. I've worked in environments in which I identify as a person of African descent, being in dominant cultures and then being someone who's my culture is not the dominant culture. So having that is always a challenge because you do question, at least for me, I'm speaking for myself, that did I make the right decision? And then one of the challenges for me, because I worked in an environment that was unionized, former president, now I'm quote unquote on the other side. It was funny because I have some folks, they see me, they, who were used to speak to me, wouldn't
Right.
speak to me anymore. And which I didn't understand it at the time. But I also, I think people had to once again have the perception of HR. And then it was just like, this is Reggie. This is Reggie. Reggie's gonna, I'm in a new role. I have a new responsibility. But to get to your answer, I probably the thing for me is what I had, and this is where I'll say throughout our discussion, is having a team of supporters. Some people call them mentors, and I interchange, but I had a team of supporters. When I became a union president, I had someone, and I like to call people's names out who have impacted my life. Rick Dow. Rick Dow was one of the founding members of the NCCC Union, Massachusetts, for the community colleges, and I think it was 1974. He's the one that saw me. He saw something in me.
Hmm.
Um, that he said, you know what, you can do this. You be a great leader. And he encouraged me, he mentored me, gave me great feedback, constructive criticism, and that helped me. And then when I took the next step, we're friends today, and I'll shout her out. Her name is Dr. Darcy Orlan. She was in higher ed for a long time. She made the same career switch like I did into HR, and she was the firm action officer at Middlesex for about 10 years, and then she was promoted, and then I took over the role. And one of the things that really impacted me in this role was that she said, when I took over this role, I just dove in. And I got training after X amount of years. And she said, I'm not going to let that happen to you. If I have the opportunity, I want to make sure you get some training. So it was like I started on June 6th. And I'm a date person. So I started on June 6th, which is, for those who know, June 6th, D-Day. So I started on June 6th, 2016. And I hadn't been, and I joke, I said, my seat wasn't even warm. 2 days later, she had me flying off to Wisconsin to do some federal affirmative action training. And that was great because it really gave me that foundation and confidence. Because investigations, any type of workplace investigations can be challenging. And for me, the challenge was because I had been at the institution at that time, I had been at the institution since 2005. So about 11, so 2016, so about 11 years. So people knew me as in one role. So now I was taking on this new role, and this new role that had investigative powers. So there was a little trepidation. And so as I got into the role and started working across the aisle, working with various unions and working with managers, it was just like, okay, you don't have to be afraid of me. I'm here to make sure that, yeah, we are enforcing our policies, but it is also about how can we, because it's all about the communication. How do we mitigate situations? And so part of my job as an HR professional is to, if you bring a concern to me, my job is to try, how do we mitigate the concerns that you have? If you're, as an employee, having a concern about your manager, have you spoke to the manager, or vice versa? The manager is having some concerns about, have you talked to the employee? Sometimes what I found is that people just haven't talked to each other. They may be emailing back and forth, or they make assumptions. And then part of that, my role, I always felt, was to make sure to work with both sides, work with both individuals, find out, drill down what the problem, if there was a problem. Some of it, sometimes, is just misperceptions. And for me, being able to have that invaluable training, and then I found, I mentioned the Coursera course, that was a total game changer because I've always been a person that some people learn differently. For me, I've always liked formalized training, and there, depending on what the needs are. And especially, we were in a time in which micro training, and it's still big now, but micro training was really, and this is when the MOOCs were there. And I still think the MOOCs did have, and that's probably for another time, for another conversation, but that really helped me because it really gave me this framing. I took 5 courses in a capstone, and that really gave me some great foundation for HR, and which led me on to getting certified through SHRM. So anyway.
No, no, that's awesome. You got a lot of training, you got a lot of years of experience under your belt, and then you went on to launch your own HR consulting firm. So tell us more about your HR consulting firm and the services that you provide.
Sure. CEL HR Consulting, and this would be the first time outside the family, and I'll say this publicly, what the CEL stands for, because a few people have asked me. For me, I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors. And for my mom and dad, they grew up in the segregated Jim Crow, people know Jim Crow, but legal segregation in northern Florida. And they were country folks. My mom grew up in the rural section of northern Florida called Raleigh, Florida. My dad grew up in a small town called Williston. My mom's an ancestor, but my dad got remarried, moved back down to his former home in Williston. He's still 93, still yeah, my dad's 93, still walking the earth. And for them, they brought a lot of those old, what we say, those old country values also. And for me, I want to honor them.
Yeah.
And so the C stands for Charlie Nichols, the E stands for Ethel Viola Hill, my mother's maiden name. And then my daughter, she's the future. So I put her name in there, London, spelled like the city. And so what inspired me to start my own business was I had worked in public service for a long time. And I was laid off back in November 2024. And what really inspired me to start my own business was I had dedicated my life to public service for so long, and I had brought a lot of skills to everything that I always poured my heart into everything. And so I thought this would be a great time, a great opportunity to do something different. So what my focus is on in for CL HR Consulting is that we work with small businesses, we work with municipalities, we work with nonprofits around employee relations. We also do inclusive work, DEI, as well as compliance work, and looking at and helping people with policy and procedures and also workplace investigations. I really thought to be very targeted about what I do to really, because those are my strength areas as an HR professional. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to do that.
Nice. So you mentioned compliance investigations and diversity inclusion. So in today's climate with many things that are going on today, how do you balance compliance with also building an inclusive workplace culture?
Absolutely. I think it comes down, we've heard this word more and more over the years, being authentic. I think that is grounded because for a lot of times we always feel like it was a Paul Dunbar, we wear the mask. And I think I know that applied to the African American sense, but it can apply to many experiences. And I think over the last few years about being authentic. So how do you balance that is that with compliance, it is about you want to make sure you are doing things in the state side, the federal side, looking at your policy and procedures as an organization. But bottom line is before DEI was spotlighted, and we can talk about what does that mean. The importance is that we know that diverse inclusive workforces do lead to organizations being successful. And that has always been the case, and that continues to be the case. And so if an organization is truly committed to being successful, it will have a plan on how to be inclusive and diverse and equitable. That's the only way an organization is going to be successful. And we know that there are reports and studies out there that have proven that. Because once again, you have people who walk into a room who bring different life experiences. Like for myself, I bring different life experiences. And you can't tell that just by looking at me. So that I think that's one of the things there is, and you may have seen this is what we call the diversity. When it talks about the diversity, those your core, the middle is the core essence, what you're born with, your personality, your gender and ethnic background. And then as you move out of that diversity, then becomes socioeconomic, education, and then you even go further out. For me, it would be I'm a sci-fi person. Just by you wouldn't know I'm a Star Trek and Star Wars fan. You would know that just by looking at me. So that's where I find that the beauty of diversity, equity, inclusion it's something that has been hallmark of my career as an HR professional. And regardless of the environment that we're in now, we know globally diversity, equity, inclusion has to be at the center of any organization that wants to be successful.
Right. Thank you so much for that. And in your answer, you mentioned that you got into your own company, your own consulting firm after a layoff. And I know the market is a bit crazy right now. So, what do you have to say to the people who are laid off right now, who are trying to navigate the market? Is there a certain way they can position themselves? What do you think would help them to have some type of advantage right now?
Great, that's a great question. And that's something that, when I think about that, definitely I'm big on learning. And I really embrace micro learning. So if you as an individual, if you're laid off, look at what skills. And my thing is that pivot to something that you're passionate about. And what do I mean by that? So for me, as an HR professional, I kept the buzz is for us generative AI. We know generative AI across the board, but everyone's talking about generative AI or AI, artificial intelligence. So what I did, I attended a conference through Hacking HR. They had a free conference. So I would say, one of the things I would say, regardless of what profession you're in, look for what's free is always good. There are some good free stuff
Oh,
out
yeah.
there, and so take advantage
Especially
of
when you're
that.
looking for a job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Look for any type of support services. I would say definitely one of the things I would say in the United States and across the world, about speaking for the United States, libraries are the heart of every community. And there's a lot of things at the library, from career services. People take advantage of those. There's a lot of free things that can help you with. I would also say try to take advantage of any type of free training. Like, for example, if you're unemployed, Coursera was offering, was through, yeah, Coursera through Google, well, vice versa. Google Essentials AI. I applied for the course, applied for financial aid. So I got a chance to take this 10-hour course and got my second digital badge with generative AI. I also recently, through Microsoft, was offering it still offers free courses on generative AI, depending on this stuff for HR, this stuff for business leaders. There's a lot. So real, and that's one of because there's so much stuff out there. And sometimes it's hard. It's like you're drinking through a fire hose. But I think being very, very strategic about what's out there. So to try to give folks the advantage, I would say definitely continue to learn, pick up a skill. If it's in your specific field, we all can use computer skills. So if it's learning Google Suite, if it's really bowling up on your Microsoft Excel, take advantage of those things. And once again, there are opportunities to take some free courses or reduce. My thing is there is a lot of free stuff out there. And I guess
Right.
so always the concern is it quality? I would say the individual, and I can speak for the things I've utilized, Coursera. Now Coursera, you can, if you want the certificate, but you can apply for financial aid. And so that's option. There's edX, which has the backing of MIT and Harvard. There's also called something called Great Learning as well. And then but I would also say if you're looking at, for example, LinkedIn Learning, it does come at a
Yes.
cost, but check with your local library. One of the things that I found out is that if you're a resident of Massachusetts, you don't have to live in Boston. You can get you a e-card. You get you an e-card from the Boston Public Library, and you have access to LinkedIn Learning. And that's what it's all about trying to find those resources, uh,
Yes.
and resources, because I would say for any individual who's unemployed, is to get retrained, get reskilled. And once again, you don't necessarily go back and get a degree, but you can get that micro learning. It's going to be so key.
That's so important. And you mentioned sometimes all the resources, all the learning can really feel like you're drinking from a water hose. There's a lot of options, everything's just coming so quickly. But one thing you can even do is look at the job postings for those jobs that you
Mhm.
want. Look at the required skills or some of the tools that they want you to be familiar with or have experience using. Even if you've used those in the past,
Mhm.
refamiliarize yourself with that. Go on LinkedIn Learning and search up how to use Microsoft Excel so you can learn some different parts of it. As you mentioned, there's a whole bunch of AI courses also. So you can learn how to use it more. Instead of maybe you say, you know how to use AI in a basic level. They'll try to do a course that'll show you an advanced understanding because these things are going to help you stand out from other people who are competing for the same job. Other people might say, "Oh yeah, I know how to use ChatGPT, for example, or I already know how to use Copilot. I use it all the time." And somebody might say that, but somebody else might say, "I know how to use this stuff, but let me go learn how to use it even more." Now
Absolutely.
that person over there has an advantage because they've gone above and beyond. So always think
Absolutely.
about that. Never feel like you've arrived and you've got it and you've used it for 5 years, 10 years. Things have always changed. There's different versions of different apps and software. So always keep learning. This is awesome, Reggie. I thank you so much for all that you've shared so far. Before I let you go, do you have anything else that you'd like to share with folks, maybe about finding jobs or about CEL HR consulting, anything at all?
Sure, I would definitely say to folks, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll be more if you follow me, I'll follow you back, as you used to say. And I'll be anything that I can do to share. I'm all about sharing information. And so I'm about opening the gate, not keeping it closed. Because my thing, the more folks that I can help, the more folks that I can get through a gate, it helps our world. And so I'm a big believer in that. So definitely please reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to have a conversation. And one of the things I've always, because I've always been in the health profession for so long, if I don't know the answer, I can at least point you in the right direction. And if you're looking for those free resources, at some point I will drop something either on LinkedIn or through my website, because I want to curate some things just to give people, like I said, I don't know all the free stuff, but I know these are things that, be as I mentioned, Coursera, edX, and the Great Learning of these are things I've actually used, so I know these are available to individuals. So please come reach out to me, say hello, and I'd be more than happy to. And once again, if I don't know the answer, I can at least point you in the right direction. That's always been my spirit. I'm just thankful for having this conversation. I know we could talk. I'm a talker, so that one of the things, and I'll put this out there in the universe. And my mom, I mentioned my mom's an ancestor, but she one of the things my mom said, she said, when I was born, I came out screaming, I haven't shut my mouth since. So I've always tried to live up to what she said. I just want to thank you for this time and thank your audience. And once they come, as they say my old neighbor, come holler at me, and they'll be more than have a conversation with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Reggie. And thank you for being so open to connect with folks. Like connections is really the way to go. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And we hope to have you another time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. I
Sure.
really
Have a
appreciate
good
it.
one.
All right. Bye bye.
All right, everyone. So that's what we have for you today. Hopefully, you enjoyed the episode and learning a bit more about Reggie's experience in HR, transitioning into HR, and also starting your own business. So, hopefully, you learned a thing or two from our career conversation. So, I hope you join us for the next one. But until then, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more tips, guidance, and knowledge to help you in exploring your career opportunities. Until next time, I'm your host, Amen, signing off.